station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
All right. Good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ricky Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And we are here every Monday at this time. We're on the radio in South Florida on 95.3 FM. 1470 AM, and live streaming on Facebook. And you can catch our old shows archived on the Facebook page or on YouTube. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. And would love to have you call in. Questions, comments, be part of the discussion.
If you want to call right now in our first couple minutes, 888-565-1470, because we will be having a guest joining us this evening.
That's right.
We're very happy to be joined again by Dr. David Hirsch, our biggest fan, it seems, and supporter and mentor from the frozen tundra of British Columbia.
That's right.
We'll be calling in just a few minutes.
Our farthest away listener.
Yeah, indeed. So you can also send in questions on the Facebook page. We ask that you probably do that sooner than later, too, because there's a delay before we see them. Hopefully we'll get them up on the screen and see them, be able to respond to you, or we'll just get back to you during the week in a response email. So you good? Your week's been good?
It's been okay. It's been busy. It's been hectic.
Been really busy. Anything exciting in the news?
It's been a lot more of the same. Well,
yeah, it's always crazy. It's the sex talk, so there's always something to talk about. I was really pleased to see John Oliver last night on HBO do a piece on something we've been talking about for 25 years at least, this thing called crisis pregnancy centers.
Right.
I think I want to identify this. People need to be aware of these scams and how how often these scams are funded by the government. CPCs, crisis pregnancy centers, if you don't know, everybody has seen them. These are pretend clinics, and they make no bones about the fact that they're set up to look like a woman's health clinic, to look like a sexual and reproductive health clinic.
To advertise services that they know
pregnancy tests,
are going to
ultrasounds.
Resonate with women and girls who are scared, who are confused, who are so unfortunately easily exploited.
And their sole purpose is to talk women out of having abortions with whatever means is necessary. If they have to lie, they pray together, they scream at them, they tell them all kinds of ridiculous lies.
Lies
be suicidal.
are really their stock in trade.
There's so many classic ones that if you have an abortion, you'll have an increased risk of breast cancer, which is an utter lie. There's never, ever been any connection whatsoever. Of course, the usual, you'll be suicidal, you'll be depressed, you'll regret it for the rest of your life, when relief is probably the most common emotion.
Absolutely. And, remember, too, that ultimately, when we look at the data, right, over time especially, women that go through this, and, we got to also be very clear, especially as males, that there's no woman that does this casually. Right? This is not, well, you know what, I can have unprotected sex. It doesn't really matter. Hey, if anything happens, I'll just get an abortion.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. This is a serious thing. This is something that women have to go through a lot, both intellectually and emotionally, socially, culturally. And when they do ultimately come to that decision, it is not an easy one, and it's one out of necessity. Yeah. So the data is very clear that women ultimately do feel that relief, and they do feel better off, and they don't regret the decision. Those that do are the ones that have been basically exploited by these crisis pregnancy centers, by these people, these anti-choice people, that are telling them all kinds of horrible, horrible things.
But then the craziest irony of all is, they cut them off. There's no support. They do everything in their power to make them deliver this baby, and then there's no support offered at all.
Because these people do not care about children. They are simply fetophilic.
Yeah, they care about
That's
fetuses.
all and they're obsessed with fetuses conceptually.
Right.
But
they don't want to step up and adopt.
No, once it's children, screw that. You're on your own.
And people don't realize that in Florida in particular, there's been a couple states that have had these Choose Life license plates. Most of them were struck down by state Supreme Courts as being, as they are, violating the Constitution.
Right.
By choosing sides on a particular, on a contentious, especially religious debate.
That's the key, right.
That the state's taking sides in. Jeb Bush was our governor when Florida started the Choose Life plates.
That's right.
And his go-around, remember?
Yep.
Oh, this has nothing to do with abortion.
Right.
This is to increase awareness for adoption. So this has no...
Exactly. That was the lie.
Really, Choose
that allowed
Life
this to
isn't
stay.
a rallying cry
Right.
for,
Right.
license. That's what bumper stickers are for, not license plates.
Right.
You want to pay a couple of extra bucks to get a University of Florida or Save the Turtles license plate. Nobody's going to get upset and demand, I want to screw the Turtles license plate. I hate turtles. I don't want my tax dollars going to pay for turtles.
Hey, I got news for you. If somebody wants to spend their money and create a vanity plate for themselves,
Sure. But the
state
shouldn't be allowed to sell license plates, raise millions of dollars, and
sanction an ideology,
and fund these crisis pregnancy centers.
Right.
Oh wow.
Right.
We'll have
and
to do
and one of the I think scariest parts that John Oliver was also talking about is when you look at some of these areas in the country where there are no reproductive health services for women.
Because they've all been picked apart by these ridiculous laws.
And you'll see some of the local people, like local news, advertisers, people in those areas say things like, well, we don't have a Planned Parenthood, but we do have, this horrible crisis pregnancy. Like that is a replacement.
It's a real problem. I've been dying since we started the show to get in here Rachel Needle and Mona Reese, two old dear friends. Rachel happens to be my partner in Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, where we train sex therapists and sexuality counselors, and is a brilliant West Palm Beach psychotherapist. And Mona Reese happens to be her mom, who's been running Presidential Women's Center in West Palm for as long as we know her, and a real comrade in the trenches, so to speak. When Larry and I both have a history with Planned Parenthood, which kind of like the mob, you don't leave. You leave the position, but you never leave the family.
That's right.
That's a forever thing. So,
it'd be nice to get in there because I think we do have to talk more about this. People really do need to be woke about this whole...
And like we say on this show very often...
scam.
This, again, needs to be added to the list of men's issues.
Yes.
Instead of men rolling their eyes and going, oh, here we go again, every time, women start yapping about birth control. Birth control is a men's issue as much as it's a women's issue.
Absolutely. Well, again, it's not even the birth control, it's the responsibility.
Pregnant.
It's the shared responsibility.
Yeah. I like that term, contraceptive responsibility.
Yeah, I've never talked about birth control. I've always framed it that way.
Because birth control implies you don't want to get pregnant. I suggest you do something to make sure that doesn't happen. Because I'm just here for the fun part. And if something happens, I ain't sticking around. That's,
Yeah. So we need more and more of that.
And it comes back to gender scripts. And let's shift it back because we'll have to do a whole show on that topic for sure. This half hour is way too short. But I want to shift it back to where we left off last week. Because our guest tonight, who should be calling in momentarily, commented too late in the show for us to talk back to it. But we were talking about polyamory last week.
Right.
And again, barely scratched the surface. There's a comment from Sarah. I work for Planned Parenthood. We've had people from a CPC park a van. They were talking about those vans, $1 million, multi-million-dollar vans with high-tech ultrasound equipment. Park a van outside our building and try to convince incoming patients. Yeah, that's part of the tactic.
Well, we know that some of these people will open up like what look like clinics right next to an actual
One
clinic.
of them, they said,
paint the
20
door the
feet
same way,
away.
make it look exactly the same, so that they can dupe people into coming into their facility and not
that's
an actual
before
clinic.
the gauntlet that for all those years women had to run through to get to a Planned Parenthood or something, of all the people yelling and screaming and showing posters of, fetuses, dismembered fetuses, and gore and all that.
Which, by the way, and again, let's call this out as long as you're on that not only are they taking it way out of cut, but these people, these are vile human beings.
It's fetishistic.
They spend
This
so much
obsession
time
with dismembered fetuses.
wading through, over their heads, the waste disposal bins outside hospitals, trying to find miscarried fetus, looking through medical waste to find things that have nothing to do with the point they're trying to make.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just
like
horrible
I said,
human beings.
To be continued on that loaded subject. But Dr. Hirsch, who I see has joined us. Good to see you, Doc. We have sound and vision. We connected. We're still trying to figure that out. No, he's not on yet.
No, not on yet. Okay.
I think you got to call in on the phone, right? Call in on the phone while you're connected to the video. Yeah. Okay. You got to tell him. Oh, okay. Hopefully he'll call in soon. But his comment about monogamy and how we use the term euphemistically now, because it really literally means only married to one. Right. It has to do with marriage, not
as polygamy is married to multiple.
Right. Polygamy is many. Monogamy is one.
Right. And it's the agamy part that really refers to marriage.
So that standard that now we use to mean exclusivity.
Right.
When in fact it's only about marriage.
I mean, theoretically,
I guess that's the assumption. If people get married,
yes.
then the assumption is that they will be exclusive.
Well, when did this term monogamy really kind of come out and start to be part of the vernacular? It was in relation to
HIV.
HIV, right.
There was the ABCs of AIDS prevention: abstinence, be monogamous, and condoms.
Right.
What does that even mean? As we used to say, since those days, it's okay if you're monogamous, make sure your partner is too.
Right.
Just like we were saying last week. Oh, you're polyamorous? Does your partner know?
Right, exactly.
Right.
There's I used to talk a lot about serial monogamy, right? Mm-hmm. I'm in a monogamous relationship, right? Well, how long did that one last?
Yeah, 8
months.
That
was a 2-week relationship, then another monogamous relationship that lasted for 3 months, and then another monogamous relationship that was by the end of the year, these people in 10 partners, and they're all monogamous.
Right.
Yeah.
But one at a time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's often what happens. And that's why I think, this idea that, monogamy was about married to one person, but as words do in our culture, they evolve. Mm-hmm. Especially when they cross generations. Now a new generation is going to use that word for their own purposes, right? Just like we're reacting to the use of the term polyamory, or people that refer to themselves as pansexual. Mm-hmm. They've changed the term. They've changed the meaning of these terms.
Right.
And you know what? We did that when we were adolescents.
Sure, I guess every
generation does it.
Everybody tries on and
that's right. That's right. Every generation.
We did that when we were adolescents. Oh boy, sorry about that.
Yeah, I got a little bit more sound.
Yeah.
So I think David's point about monogamy being sort of used euphemistically is correct, but I don't know if I would take issue with it, because it has since evolved into the way of defining relationship dynamics. Not just marriage, but just the dynamics of a relationship, how people connect with each other. Right? And it's often, I think, used to describe an ideal or some kind of
there's
some sort of standard that we're supposed to follow.
But there's so much fantasy in that. Like we've said before on this show, how do people in relationships know what the rules are?
Right.
When they break them.
Right.
Right. So there's this idea of a contract that's blank, and we just sign it and fill it in as we go along. And there's no negotiation. There's no discussion. People don't have a sense of what what the boundaries are.
Yeah, it's all assumption.
How often do sex therapists see couples where the view, the perception of one person looking at pornography is that they're cheating?
Right.
That's an affair.
Right.
Their sexual attention is going somewhere else besides their partner. Is that a realistic standard for what marriage or monogamy?
Well, but
is?
I don't know that that's the right question.
What's the right question?
It's not the right question to ask if that's a realistic standard or if that's okay. I think the question is that something that's acceptable to all parties involved?
Okay.
All right.
That's the negotiation.
That's the right. That's the negotiation. That's the being on the same page. That's the understanding what we expect from each other. That's the communication that doesn't happen.
And communication doesn't happen.
Right.
Way more often than it does.
No, and I mean that's the point.
I think that's the standard right there. Is people just going on these scripted things, nonverbal communication, even with sex, right? Like that point that Dan Savage made, I think, on Bill Maher's show, that for a heterosexual couple, if there's a pickup in a bar, a hookup or something like that, do you want to have sex? The conversation could end there because everybody assumes they know what's going to happen, who's going to do what to whom, right? But for two women or two men, do you want to have sex is the beginning of a conversation.
All right. What does that look like?
Discuss.
What's going to be involved?
Right.
How do Who gets to be on top?
What am I into? Right. What is the whole? Right. And I think there's a lesson there for heterosexuals.
Absolutely. In fact, I think
not assume anything.
The queer kink world has a lot to teach heterosexuals about relationships and communication.
Sorry, we're having trouble with Dr. Hirsch. I hope he's going to log back on.
Yeah.
Because I know he's got something to say about this.
Oh, yeah. But when you look in some of these kink dynamics, especially power play, control play, B&D, S&M kinds of things,
there's so much negotiation and communication.
Absolutely.
And that's the key.
Right. So I think people can learn from that.
Doc, you on the phone? What happened there with the video? There you are.
Is that you?
Yes.
Hello.
I'm glad we worked that out.
I don't know what happened. Last time I was just right on the computer, and so anyway, hello.
The Aurora Borealis.
Yeah, you're so far up there. You got interference from. It's
Obama's fault.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Doc. I'm
nice
glad
to see
you commented. Well, first, thanks for listening to the show as often as you do and supporting us. We're really grateful.
It's like about a half an hour before my dinner. I don't eat before 6:30, 7 o'clock, and so 6 o'clock is Linda decides she wants to see the second hour of news of repetition, but this time on CBC. I'm glad to sit here and talk to you.
Excellent.
Nice. So we're glad to have you back on the show. And we were talking last week, we saw your comment after the show ended about the euphemistic use of the word monogamy, and we were just discussing that some more.
I just heard you say, it's what they really simply mean is they mean sexual exclusivity. The idea of monogamy, which means married to one person, is a foregone conclusion except in the glorious state of Utah. But anyway, so what they're really talking about sexual exclusivity, they don't always say the word sex.
Right. Right. So it's become a euphemism the way sleeping with has become a euphemism.
Or going to bed with, you know. Went to bed.
Right.
Yeah. I remember from our sexuality and religion class some discussion around the word celibacy.
Celibate, yeah.
Not meaning not having sex the way we use it now, but also meaning not to marry. Like priests taking a vow of celibacy was an agreement not to marry, not for any religious reason, but more about benefits.
Right,
the
property.
church said, you're going to work for us, you'll live here, we'll pay for all your expenses, but we're not going to pay for your wife and 16 kids, so you're going to agree not to get married if you want this job. Nuns take a vow of chastity.
I think about it's a sex worker you're talking about.
What do you mean?
Sell a bit.
Sell a bit. Oh, David, really? That's really? Oh man! And I'll blame it on the delay. Why that took so long?
That you're wasting long distance charges on?
It doesn't cost me a thing.
How is it up in British Columbia? Are you seeing any signs of spring yet?
On and off. Yeah, this is the latest snow time that we've had. We had snow the other day, and it usually doesn't come about in April. They usually allow you to take your chains off on March 31st. They've just extended it to April 30th up here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's
been stubborn all over the country. Yeah. How a Brooklyn boy ended up in British Columbia, I'll never know. Yeah. But
well, someday I'll tell you a story, but we don't want to.
So again, so on that point of using the euphemism, while I guess you were trying to connect, we were also sort of talking about how, I mean, there's something that's very natural. We do that with anything that relates, I think, to sex and relationships. And certainly every generation redefines these euphemisms for themselves. Right? So, again, as you going to bed with, sleeping with, I usually tell people, by the way, to at least, every once in a while, spend a day, take people literally.
Yeah.
All right? So if somebody says, did you sleep together? Tell them, no, we didn't get any sleep at all. We were just up all night having sex.
Well, Canadians are pretty literalist people, so I've gotten in trouble with not being a literalist, and they really are. So,
let me ask you this, Doc.
When you talk about monogamy, I really talk about the guise of monogamy. If you don't include guys, you're not able to modify that word in a way that is reality. And you guys talk about what the ideal. I don't even know if it's the ideal to be sexually exclusive.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think in terms of the expectation and the actuality, sure, I agree.
Well, in the real world out there, as soon as he sticks it in, they're sexually exclusive.
I guess for a lot of people, there's that expectation.
Yeah.
Again,
Yes,
something that should best be talked about before sex happens, not after.
But
Right.
One would think.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you have people who come into the office, as do I, and you can make an assumption, yes, accurately, very much. They've even talked about it before they got married. They became sexually exclusive simply by the process. It wasn't a discussed or an agreed upon. It wasn't a. I mean, I'm not against sexual exclusivity. It's just one of those things that I think needs to be renegotiated every 6 months.
Sure, it should be an actual choice, not a default status or expectation.
That's correct. Yes.
Right. Yes. And people just aren't real good at talking about that stuff, are they?
No, and they don't get better at it.
Huh.
That's true. Not talking doesn't make you better at talking eventually.
And when the sex doesn't work and you get married, it doesn't get better.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm not just, it's because you're...
Be a devil's advocate.
It's not because you're old. I'm not implying that in any way, but you're...
And you tell me you don't want me to use certain terminology, and you call me old.
No, I said I'm not calling you old.
Oh, okay.
I'm calling you a seasoned and experienced therapist who's been around a while. What's... old fart. How would you compare today's... We were talking last week about that kind of, I hate to say, the trendiness around polyamory with the rules being broken back in the late 60s, early 70s. That we talked last time you were on the show about the early days of the field and, the whole free love thing. How would you compare and contrast the idea of open relationships and free love with today's kind of new rules around polyamory? If that's not a contradiction.
Visible, and it's talked about more certainly, but it's not a construct that just came about all of a sudden. It's always been there. There have always been people who have chosen some type of alternative paths in their sexualities throughout history. I mean, I grew up in a condom era, and the pill came about in the early 60s. I think my first wife went on the pill in 1962. And that changed things. And I think that was the beginning of where women started having permission to be adults.
Yeah.
Which they have considerably lost over time.
Now, see,
Yes,
that's an interesting
agree.
point. I
Yeah.
want to jump on that for a second as well. Again, in the spirit of playing devil's advocate, you say women have lost that over time. Is that something that you're seeing along with this idea of more non-monogamy?
No, I see that as through the political correctness, through the Me Too, through the victimization or the pose of victimization, through the inability to, not about saying no, the inability to say yes, the inability to initiate. You know, if you really want to stop all type of sexual harassment, all you have to do is scare the shit out of the men. They'll never initiate again. No sex will happen, and all the Christians will be happy.
Remember, we got to watch those Carlin's 7 dirty words you can't say on the radio. I still got the FCC to contend with, you dirty old man.
Word?
Yeah. But that's women are kind of constricted in new ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's politics still, even, bringing it back to the birth control thing.
Yeah.
It's a
And
way of...
actually, one of the reasons why I even asked that is because I've seen some of that as well, where again we have that almost kind of default status that the relationship we're supposed to be striving for, an adult relationship, is a monogamous relationship, a connected relationship. And I see even more as more people are saying, I don't want that kind of relationship. That's not the dynamic I want to see. There is some criticism of it being less mature.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Also, we were talking earlier about euphemisms, and you just used that euphemism called birth control. It's not birth control, it's conception control.
Right.
Exactly.
Excellent. Yes.
Exactly.
Touche. Right.
And I come from a perspective that I perceive abortion as the only permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
Well.
Not very popular.
But how you apply that to something else, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that poignant note, we're at our tail end. I'm sorry, this just sneaks up on us way too quick every week.
I enjoy doing this stuff. If you're ever in desperate and need somebody and want to schmooze, I'm glad.
We're always glad to have you.
Yeah, I always
really,
like talking
a lot of
to you.
respect, a lot of admiration. Hopefully, one of these days we'll be together in person.
Well, that's probably not going to happen. I don't do Florida, and I don't do the conferences anymore, and Anyway,
maybe we'll get a team of Huskies and make our way up there.
Yeah, we'll do something up in Vancouver.
You're more than welcome. This is this great summer place and great skiing in the winter if you're into that, and have an open door for people.
All right,
Maybe
indeed.
I'd love to. We'll have a conversation about collaborating, maybe doing some training together.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
That would be awesome.
Thank you so much.
Really,
and thank you all for
Thank
listening
Good to
and
have
watching.
Be good.
Yes, as usual, our time goes too quickly. There's the music. We got to split, but thanks for joining us, and tune in next Monday and every Monday at 9 o'clock on Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.